Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 234, Whittaker versus Gastelum. And Shaq, it's going down this weekend. Two former welterweights are fighting for the UFC middleweight championship, and I have a feeling this is going to be a very explosive fight, Shaq.
Yeah, man, this is one of the best middleweight fights of all time, man. Both these guys are still young, still in their prime, still going strong. Both guys have beaten legends. These are two middleweights in their prime, and I truly think these are the two best middleweights in the world at the current state right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Not only are they in the position they're in for a reason, but both these guys actually came up through the Ultimate Fighter. They both won their respective seasons of the Ultimate Fighter. Now they're meeting in this middleweight championship bout. It's going to be incredible. But man, the co-main event of the evening, you got the old versus the new, because Anderson the Spider Silva is taking on Israel Adesanya. And I know the odds are currently wide, but Anderson Silva said he always wanted to fight his clone. This is the closest thing we've seen up until now, Shaq.
Yeah, man, Israel's been looking better fight to fight. I mean, he's been wiping guys out recently, man. His performances just keep getting better and better. I mean, he's been showing that he's got a ground game as well. We know what Anderson is. He's one of the greatest of all time, one of the best to ever do it. We know he's got that aura. He's got that mystique about him still. And he's coming off a win. And, I mean, he still tests a lot of guys, man. That fight with Bisping was great. I mean, let's not forget he also hurt Daniel Cormier to the body as well. So Anderson's still a legend, and he still got it, man.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And oftentimes when people talk about how, oh, this guy might be on his way out, he doesn't have it anymore, you see a performance like Jose Aldo versus Renato Moicano, where the former champion goes out there and defeats the young blood. And I know some people might not like that example because they feel like, well, the odds on the Aldo Moicano fight were a coin flip, and Israel versus Anderson, it's minus 650. But what I'm trying to say here is that the former legend slash GOAT of the division, Jose Aldo, and in this case Anderson Silva, went out there and defeated the guy that many people are calling the future of the division in Renato Moicano. In this case, the future of the division is Israel Adesanya. So I'm just saying, if Anderson can come out here and defeat a guy like Israel, all of the MMA world's going to explode, Shaq.
For sure, man. And on the other side of things, man, if Israel wins this fight, I think he's ready for a title shot, man. If Rob wins, they could do a nice little build up to that fight. And if Kelvin wins, that's a great fight as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, Israel versus Rob, that's an all-Australian showdown, even though some might claim New Zealand. But, Shaq, just the fact that they could potentially have that fight down under would be incredible. And if Anderson wins, talk about an upset, man. So I cannot wait to see what happens there. Well, Shaq, let's break down this whole card start to finish, my man, because first up in the bantamweight division, we got Jonathan Martinez versus Luigi Burin. And Jonathan Martinez, he's 9-2. Luigi Burin is 11-6. Currently, they got Jonathan Martinez minus 160. The comeback on Luigi Burin is plus 140. So I got to know your thoughts on the matchup and the line, man.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that Martinez is staying at 135, considering that he's a former flyweight in his debut against Sukumtach. Sukumtach is definitely a more experienced guy, definitely more UFC experience. And it showed throughout the fight, man. Martinez seemed like he was a fish out of water. He's definitely very green, but, he is trying to do the necessary adjustments. He did go out to Factory X before this fight, so maybe he comes a little better. Maybe he comes maybe a not so nervous. I mean, Sukumtach for a debut is might be a little bit too much, but the fact that Sukumtach, a guy who's known for, just being a one-shot Muay Thai guy, the fact that a low-volume guy as well, the fact that he able to just pretty much walk him down and, do whatever he wanted to the kid pretty much. I know Martinez got a couple takedowns, but I think that was just due to Andre being so tired from all the punches he landed. But so I do have my I am a little skeptical if Martinez is ready for the UFC level. And Luigi, on the other hand, man, he's had a tough UFC career. He did lose that fight to Rolando D at 145, and Rolando was just a more physical striker in that sense, man. He just landed the harder shots. 145 versus a bantamweight. I mean, the size showed, the power of the shot showed, and he lost that fight. It was a good showing. And in his fight against Vera, he did fairly well in the first round, got a few takedowns. And against a guy like Vera, who's a lot more seasoned than Jonathan Martinez, a lot more experienced Martinez, the holes in Luigi's game are gonna get exposed, and the holes is that sometimes against these physical guys that these experienced guys like D and Vera, you know, sometimes they can kind of make him freeze up when he gets hit because he's not as physically strong as those guys, man. So, it's going to be interesting, man. I actually think there is some value on Luigi. I think Martinez is a tough kid. He's somewhat of a good prospect, definitely could come better, but he's also very green, man. He's got a lot to learn. He's got a long ways to go to succeed in this bantamweight division, especially at bantamweight, man. So I'm actually going to take Luigi as an underdog pick. I think he's a more well-rounded fighter. I think he definitely is going to have to keep it together for 15 minutes this time, which is something he hasn't been able to do. But I think his opponent isn't going to present as much danger as Orlando D and Chito Vera. I definitely think Martinez is going to test him a little bit, but I think the experience of Luigi, the fact that he's fought better competition than Martinez, and the fact that, this is his third time, maybe he's a little more comfortable fighting in Australia. It's closer to home. So I'm going to take Luigi in a upset.
Yeah, I feel you on that pick, man, because Jonathan Martinez, firstly, he's a natural flyweight, so he's already going to be too small for bantamweight. A lot of the issues that Luigi was having was, he fought at 145 pounds versus Orlando Dye. I know D's not the best guy around, but there are weight classes for a reason, and Luigi was simply the smaller man in that fight. So then he goes against Marlon Chito Vera, and initially he was supposed to fight Barrett Candaray, and that was going to be Luigi Burns' first UFC win. But then they put him in there with the 10-fight veteran Marlon Chito Vera, and look, it went how it went. I mean, Luigi, he was finding a home for his right hand, landed some nice takedowns. Unfortunately, one of the issues he's had in the past is that he can't maintain that pace for all 3 rounds, and Marlon got to him, man. But I'm not convinced that Jonathan Martinez will get to him because it seems to me like Martinez might not quite be ready for this level right now. He might need a couple more fights on the regional scene, get that seasoning, because like you were talking about, against Andre Sukumtut, look, there's no shame in losing to a guy that's that much more experienced than you. It's the way that he lost. Andre Sukumtut's known for being a guy that will get his ass kicked the entire time, close his eyes, and land a counter shot and knock you out like he did to Luke Sanders. But the fact that Andre Sukumtut's beating this kid pillar to post, bell to bell, I mean, that just let me know that Martinez wasn't on this level. And yeah, he landed a takedown in round 2. Of course he landed a takedown. When Andre Sukumtut is beating your ass for 7 straight minutes, of course he's going to need 1 little minute to take a little breather. So yeah, Martinez took him down, but I don't think Martinez is just going to be able to take Luigi down that easily. Maybe when he does slow down, because he does tend to slow down. But bottom line, I think Luigi takes 2 of the 3 rounds, wins this decision. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Jalen Turner. He's minus 245. The comeback on Callan Potter is plus 205. Shaq, I got to make sure I tell you their records first. I got to stick to the new format. Callan Potter is 17-7. Jalen Turner is 7-4. So the underdog is much more experienced. The underdog is from Australia. This fight's in Australia. Jalen Turner is one of the taller guys at 155 pounds. He's 6'3". But interestingly enough, he's fighting a guy in Potter who's 6'1". So the height's not going to be too big of a difference here. In fact, this might actually be the tallest guy that Jalen Turner's ever fought because he's probably used to beating up on much shorter men. And, man, Jalen Turner, look, he's got the physical attributes. 6'3", he's athletic, he's a specimen. But, dude, he's been KO'd stiff 4 times in his career. And there's a reason behind that. Obviously, his chin isn't the best, but the way he fights, he loves to do a 15-minute pace in the first round. I mean, the guy likes to come in there, throw everything but the kitchen sink, and sometimes he's going to get guys out of there. Look, all of his wins are first-round finishes. Anytime this guy has been past the first round, he has lost. And he's also lost in the first round as well. He's been stopped many times. So, man, my thing with Jalen Turner is I know he's got the potential, but I'm also questioning, similar to Jonathan Martinez, I'm questioning if he's ready for the UFC right this second. And with Callan Potter, he's I know a lot of people are going to call him an Australian journeyman, and maybe to an extent you're right, but the dude definitely brings a lot to the table. First of all, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He trains with Dan Kelly and with Jim Crute, so he's trained with good guys over there in Australia. And for the longest time, a lot of people were saying that Callan Potter should have been in the UFC a couple of years ago. They're saying that this is a little bit too late. For the longest time, it was Dan Kelly and Callan Potter who were the mentors and the role models for all the young up-and-coming guys in Australia. It's just that Dan Kelly got to the UFC and Callan Potter didn't until this point. So now that he is, everyone kind of views it as this was a long time coming. Like, this guy's paid his dues. He's won 9 of his last 10 fights. And I know he got stopped by Marcin Held via a heel hook. Listen, that shit will happen from time to time. At least he didn't take any, chin damage. And getting stopped by a heel hook against Marcin Held doesn't mean shit when you're fighting Jalen Turner. It comes down to the stand-up skills. Now, obviously, Jalen is going to be the faster, more athletic guy. But one thing I'll say about Callan Potter is that he doesn't get into unnecessary exchanges. He fights with his hands up. He's meat and potatoes. I know he looks like an old man and stuff, but just like Dan Kelly looked like an old man, just because they look like that doesn't mean they can't go out there and whoop some ass, because you saw my boy Dan Kelly finish Antonio Carlos Jr. So as far as this matchup's concerned, I think that Callan Potter does close the distance. He's got to be careful early. And I think he gets him down. I think he takes his back, and I think he chokes him out. So I'm going to go with the hometown underdog, Callan Potter, here for the upset.
Yeah, you make some good points. Turner, he definitely likes to mismanage his cardio in that Mustaki fight. I mean, that was a 15-minute pace inside one round. He definitely left a lot of openings that, a lot better punchers would probably knock him out towards the end of that first round. And the Vicente fight, I thought he was going technique for technique fairly well. But, when you're in there with a guy like Vicente with that power, one shot, you might be looking up at the lights. Calvin Potter seems like a tough guy, definitely paid his dues, seems like he's very patient, very defensively aware, so that's a good thing he's got going for him. What I'm a little skeptical of is his offense enough to take Turner out in the late rounds. I think Turner's an athletic guy that, he's still a young man, growing fight to fight. He might gain a little bit more skills, so I'm going to take Jalen Turner actually by decision.
Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Lando Vannata. He's minus 410. And the comeback on Marcos Rosa is plus 330. Now, Shaq, when Anderson Silva took this fight against Israel Adesanya, he made 2 demands. The first demand was, if I win this fight, I better get the next title shot. And the second demand was, if I am to fight Israel Adesanya, the UFC need to sign my friend, Marcos Rosa. Well, they just signed his friend Marcos Rosa. He's a plus 330 underdog to Lando Vannata. Now, the thing here, Shaq, is that Vannata, he doesn't seem to win UFC fights. He's 1-5. I know it's officially 1-3-2, but between you and me, 2 draws, those aren't wins, Shaq. He's 1-3-2 in the UFC. So I got to know, man, you think he's finally going to get his second UFC win here? Or do you think the newcomer Marcos Rosa, who is a 6'2" former welterweight, can come out here and give Lando Vannata some issues?
Yeah, I think pretty much anything can give Lando Vannata issues at this point. The thing is, Marcos Rosa really, realistically, doesn't belong in the UFC. Granted, he is friends with Anderson Silva, but he's got no get-up game. He's got good technique. He's definitely, you can definitely tell he's been training with Anderson throughout his career. But, look, nothing with Lando Vannata would surprise me. There's no way in hell I would ever bet Lando as a big favorite. But Marcos Rosa, this guy definitely needs a lot of work. But Lando, man, I think he's still gifted offensively like we saw in the Frivola fight. But the thing is, he seems like he turns into a mummy and starts eating a lot of punishment. The thing with Marcos Rosa, it seems like he's a very strict, disciplined Muay Thai fighter that doesn't necessarily, let everything go. Seems like he just likes to be very technical and patient. So it's going to be just because, I don't think Marcos Rosa is ready for the UFC. But like I said, nothing would surprise me. I think there's a good chance Lando tries to give Marcos Rosa every opportunity to win this fight. So nothing would surprise me.
So who you got, man?
Lando Vannata.
So he's picking Lando Vannata. Look, after that night when Lando Vannata fought Drakkar Klose, I basically lost all my trust in him. It's not because he took an L. Look, many fighters take an L. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the fact that from bell to bell, he literally didn't fight at all, man. He let Drakkar dictate the pace from the start. And between you and me, Shaq, we knew that fight was over from the first calf kick. So, I don't know if those fights with Tony Ferguson and just the war with Tamor, the Bobby Green fight, I don't know if that took out so much from his soul that he's not able to put on the performances that he used to, because coming into the UFC, he was an undefeated fighter. He goes in there with Tony Ferguson, and no shame in losing to, the former interim champ, Tony Ferguson, in your UFC debut on short notice. He went out there, got a fight of the night. after that, the knockout of John Makdessi, we were all like, yes, this is the Lando Vannata we've all been expecting. But since that point, he never won a fight ever again. It's been 4 fights in a row, and it's he comes out super hard. The trend is always the same, Shaq. He comes out super hard in that first round, but doesn't pace himself. Will throw cartwheel head kicks, shit you've never seen before, shit that will get guys out on the regional scene, but when you start doing that in the UFC, you hit the guy with your hardest shot, he still doesn't go down. Then you start to gas out. Then you start to question yourself. That's why I think Lando Vannata hasn't been getting the result that he wants. And with Marcos Rosa, he's got a lot of work, to succeed in the UFC, because he's coming into the UFC already somewhat inexperienced. He made that transition from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. And Shaq, we already know the deal with these guys transitioning from kickboxing to mixed martial arts. I mean, you take them down one time and that round is over. They are not getting back up, and that's going to be the case here. It's just that, can you trust Lando Vannata to use his D1 wrestling skill and take this guy down to the ground where he has an easy path to victory? Because everything we've seen from Lando is he loves to stand and trade. Well, Marcos Rosa is a former kickboxing world champion. But that being said, the distance in MMA is so different. The gloves, just everything. So that's why some of these former champion kickboxers, they come to MMA and it doesn't translate. So I'm very curious. It comes down to Lando's approach. Is he going to let Marcos Rosa have the fight he wants, or is he going to disrupt that, take him down to the mat, and show him that there are levels to this shit? So I think Lando is the rightful favorite, but I would sure as hell not lay minus 410 on him in this spot. So it's honestly a dog or pass situation here, man. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Kyung Ho Kang. He's minus 410, and the comeback on Teruto Ishihara is plus 330. Shaq, everyone's saying this is a foregone conclusion that Kyung Ho Kang is just going to come out here and turn up on Teruto Ishihara. I got to know, man, do you feel that same way as well?
I'm not necessarily, I don't know about turn up. Look, I just think Teruto Ishihara is a very, very mentally fragile fighter. I think that he's a guy that can get deterred very easily. I think his cardio is very suspect. One thing Teru does have going for him, he does have power in his left hand, but the thing is, although he's got power in that left hand, when things get done unto him, he just seems to break. This guy got 30-26 by Gray Maynard in like a couple years ago. That's embarrassing, I just think, the Peter Yan fight, the damage is done, but I think Kyung Ho is good enough to come out here, take care of business, whether that be by taking his back. He did show that he can still scramble with guys like Ramos and at least take care of business against guys like Guido Canetti in the first round. Those are his only 2 fights in the last 4 years, but he's still getting in the groove of things. He's definitely a little older than what he used to be, but mostly I just think the fight comes down to Teru just being mentally fragile. I think he breaks very easily, so I got Kyung Ho Kang.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously bring up some good points, but similar to the last fight, I think it all comes down to Kyung Ho Kang's approach once again, because look, we can say all we want about if you push that pace on Teruto Ishihara. Yes, he has broken in the past, but one thing he brings to the table is that guy has a very nice pull left hand. I mean, his pull counters in those first 2 UFC fights when he knocked those guys out, I know, granted, they were lower level guys, but hey, that was definitely some skill involved there to get those kind of KOs that he did. But as far as Kyung Ho Kang's concerned, I mean, the guy's obviously the more well-rounded fighter here, no doubt about it. But if he decides to stand and bang with Teruto Ishihara, he will give Ishihara somewhat of a chance to potentially win this fight. So while I do favor Kyung Ho Kang, I definitely don't favor him at minus 410. I'm thinking more minus 250, minus 300. Minus 410 is a bit of a stretch. So at this current line, man, I do think it's dog or pass. However, I'm personally not going to be taking that underdog shot because I do not trust Teruto Ishihara, dating back to the fight you mentioned, the Gray Maynard fight, where I was thinking, look, he's got a walking corpse in front of him. Let's just go out there, touch him on the chin one time, the fight's over. He didn't even touch him. He didn't even throw a single punch the entire fight. So I was just like, man, I cannot trust this guy with my money ever again. But I think that Kyung Ho Kang is not going to try to lay on him. I think Kyung Ho Kang is going to give him the war he wants, but I simply think Kyung Ho Kang is the tougher guy, and he will prevail in that spot. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got Kai Kara France. He's minus 310. The comeback on the newcomer, Raulian Paiva, is plus 255. Now, Shaq, Kai Kara France has an 18-7 record, and Raulian Paiva is making his UFC debut with an 18-1 record. You don't often see guys making their debuts with an 18-1 record. And not to mention, they're trying to get rid of the flyweight division. So the fact that they signed this kid, who is a flyweight, he's 18-1, that shows me that not. Listen, whatever's going on behind the scenes, we don't know the full story, because the fact that last week they signed that 14-1 flyweight Rogerio Bontorin, who went on to beat Magomed Bibulatov. Now they signed another one who's 18-1. Shaq, they're still signing flyweights even though they say that division's over. So I gotta know, man. You think the 18-1 newcomer can get the win here in his debut?
Yeah, it's a good fight, man. Kai Kara-France looked good in his debut against Elias Garcia, and we know about Kai Kara-France from Tough. He had that KO over Terrence Mitchell, and then he fought Pantoja. And we know he's got a reputation of being, I guess, a power puncher. He's definitely very experienced, trains at a good gym, and Raulian Paiva, on the other hand, definitely 18-1. I mean, that says it all right there. Long flyweight from Brazil, and he didn't fight cans in Brazil either. He definitely fought respectable guys. He's coming off a win against a 17-5 guy on the Contender Series in a great war. And this fight kind of reminded me of Bontorin's fight on Contender Series. Just a spirited war where both guys get tested mentally and have to deal with adversity. And Paiva, man, this guy takes care of business. Kai Kara-France, I think he's a good puncher, definitely experienced. But I think Kai Kara-France, I think there's two different types of Kai Kara-Frances. I think there's the Kai Kara-France that's out in the open, throwing all his strikes, catching guys, knocking guys out. And, that's against guys like, Elias Garcia, who, quite frankly, didn't really belong in the UFC. Those guys were 5-1, not much stand-up. And he still dropped him. And, he's a jiu-jitsu guy. We saw the De La Rosa fight. I mean, Elias Garcia, and he's not in the UFC anymore. And against Pantoja, we saw what happened when, a crazy, wild Brazilian started charging at him. And he just didn't have enough output to win the decision. Pantoja definitely kind of spooked him a little bit, but Pantoja definitely had the threat of the takedown. I think Paiva and Kai Kara-France, the way they got in line is that Kai Kara-France is, a clear step ahead of him. And if that's the case, then that's the case. But I don't think so, man. I think these guys are on a fairly even playing field. I think a guy's 18-1. I mean, that says a lot. I think it's definitely a dog or pass situation. I think Kai Kara-France definitely has got some sting in his punches, but I think Paiva can change the type of fight. I think, like I said, there's two different type of Kai Kara-Frances. When you push him back and you get aggressive with him and you make it a war, I think he kind of shies away. But I think when he's aggressive and he's able to just walk guys down and knock guys out, he's really good. So I think Paiva's going to make this a spirited war. I think he's going to test Kai Kara-France right off the bat like he does. He likes to come out, take the center, and start throwing punches. I think this guy's got good boxing. He can scramble. He can get up. I don't think this is one of the situations where he's going to get laid on or anything, I think the only chance the Kai Kara-France, the one real good thing he has got going for him is his power. But I don't think he has that power moving back. So I'm actually going to take Paiva in an upset, man. I think they're underrating this guy.
Yeah, one thing I'll say about Kai Kara-France is obviously from a technical standpoint, the dude brings it. He's over there in Australia training with Israel Adesanya and the whole crew. So he's definitely got a great gym behind him, and he's also very experienced. So if you're not quite up to par and you're fighting a guy like Kai Kara-France, he will go out there, he will put that Muay Thai clinic on you, and he's well-rounded too, man. He's been fighting for a very long time. If he needs to mix it up, take you to the mat, he's able to do that as well. However, what I have seen from Kai Kara-France is that if you're willing to stand up to him, his mindset does change a little bit, because he's not really known, and I say this, he's coming off a fight of the night against Elias Pettis and stuff, but he's not really known for those back-and-forth fights, man. And I know someone's going to give me shit because he just got a fight of the night, but what I'm trying to say here is that, he's a guy that's had about 25 pro fights, and he's going to back-and-forth fights with guys who have only had 5 pro fights, guys that, Elias Pettis, his name's Elias Garcia, but he's Pettis' younger cousin, so I call him Elias Pettis. But look, against Elias Pettis, who has no business in the UFC, you can't be getting dropped by guys like that. And against Pantoja is amazing, by the way. But that fight became a battle of wills, and the will of the Brazilian persevered in that spot, man. So I definitely think that with Kai Kara-France, if you stand up to this guy, that you can beat him. It's just about, because he has 25 pro fights, he is so experienced. If you're not quite ready for him, he will go out there, put that clinic on you. But that being said, now he's fighting a kid making his debut with an 18-1 record. When you talk about being 18-1, that means that he has paid his dues on that regional scene. And I know that some Brazilians come into the UFC with super padded records, but I don't think this kid's one of them, man. If you go back and you watch those fights, also the Contender Series fight, that was a fucking back and forth war, a split decision, a fight where his heart was tested, his grappling, his striking, everything. You had to see, is this kid the real deal or not, making his UFC debut? Because remember when Tomas Almeida made that UFC debut with, I believe, a 19-1 record, a 20-1 record? I thought it was the most amazing thing, but a lot of people were telling me, like, dude, he's a can crusher. His record is completely padded. So that's something you got to look into with these guys making their debuts, and I don't think that Raulian Paiva padded his record, man. I think that this guy took the tough fights on the Brazilian regional scene. I think that he's also got some size for the flyweight division. You don't often see flyweights that are 5'8". That's like the equivalent of a 6'1" lightweight. That means that he's the long, tall guy for that division. And one thing I'll say about him, he does start a little bit slow, so I think that Kai Kara-France is going to get off on some leg kicks early. He is going to start landing some nice combos. You're going to hear his coaches be like, oh, yeah, when he starts landing those shots. But once he starts to slow it down, Raulian Paiva is not the kind of guy that's going to get discouraged from that, opening storm that Kai Kara-France brings to the table. He's the kind of guy that will take that ass whooping up front, come back in the second and third round, and you start to slow down on a guy like Raulian Paiva, and he will tee off on you. And that's something I have noticed in Kai Kara-France's fights, that everything has to be going perfect for this guy in order for him to go out there and get that win. He does have 7 defeats on his professional record, Shaq. I think it's about to be 8 defeats, my man. I'm going to go with Raulian Paiva for the upset in his UFC debut here. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got Shane Young. He's minus 335. The comeback on Austin Arnett is plus 275. Shaq, I think from the jump, we kind of thought Shane Young was going to win this fight and be a favorite. My question here is, did you think he was going to be a minus 335 favorite?
Yeah, I guess it was a little surprising to see him line this high. I do think he's going to win this fight. I think Arnett's a tough guy. I think he's got a good chin. I think he's good at taking punishment. But, I think he was a beneficiary of Humberto Bandenay being a complete fraud. I think Humberto Bandenay, if you've seen some of the stuff that guy's done on the local scene, you wouldn't be shocked at what he did against Arnett. And props to Arnett. He took care of business. He got his first UFC win. Like I said, I think Arnett's tough. I think he'll walk guys down. It's just he's slow. He's not very athletic. His offense isn't that hard. So I definitely think Shane Young is the more dangerous fighter. I think Shane Young definitely got a lot better in between the Volkanovski and Orlando D fight. That's for sure. He's been training at that camp as well with Israel and Hooker and France and them. So, he's definitely improving. He's got a big chin, but that big chin can take a lot of punishment as well, man. He's got a great chin. He's very durable. So, I think Shane Young is going to be the tough guy. I think he's going to, just kind of rough Arnett up a little bit, just land the harder shots. But I think there's a chance Arnett gets finished, but I also think there's a chance that Arnett, shows his toughness again. So, but I got Shane Young by decision.
Yeah, Shane Young was very impressive in his first UFC win against Rolando D. He's the kind of guy that'll push the pace on you from bell to bell, and he does not seem to get tired. Now, what's interesting about this matchup is, like you mentioned, Austin Arnett does have a granite chin, so sometimes with these guys that do take that ass whooping up front, you slow down on them, they will come back in that third and final round, but I haven't really seen too many signs that Shane Young has a cardio issue or a pacing issue or anything like that. Seems like he can go 3 hard, and that's what you need in this spot against Austin Arnett. Look, Austin Arnett, he definitely had a very padded record on the regional scene. You look at those opponents that he was fighting, and all of them were sub 500, and it was quite bad. But then he came to the UFC. I know Brandon Davis put that clinic on him. Obviously, Corey Sandhagen. Well, you want to talk about clinics. The real clinic was what Corey Sandhagen did to him. But after that, against Humberto Bandenay, he came through as a big underdog. I know it was a close fight. He kind of edged out the second and third round. I think Shane Young has a little bit too much tenacity for him, a little bit too much ferocity. Maybe not firepower, but just the pace he pushes, the output. I think it's going to be too much volume for Austin Arnett. And most likely a 30-27, but it could be a 29-28. I mean, if Shane Young beats his ass to the point where he starts getting tired in that third round, maybe Austin Arnett can come back, make it a 29-28. But that being said, I definitely think the favorite Shane Young rolls here. Now, next up in the lightweight division, we got Devontae King Smith. He's minus 250, and the comeback on Dong Young Maestro Kim is plus 210. Well, Shaq, this is going to be an unbelievable fight because obviously Devontae Smith made a lot of waves in his UFC debut with that beautiful first-round KO. Also knocked out his opponent on Contender Series, a guy we've been hearing about for a long time. He's taking on the Maestro Dong Young Kim, who very, very tough guy. I know you remember his brawl, his fight of the night with Polo Reyes, but more recently, he's been taking a safer approach. He's been taking less shots, so I got to know, man, do you think Dong Young Kim can grind out a win over Devontae Smith here?
Yeah, Maestro's an extremely tough guy. He's come a long way from those first two UFC losses. He's definitely realized that he needed to mix it up a little bit, use his judo skills. And Devontae Smith, this guy's a serious athlete, man. This guy is seriously fast. He's got big power in his hands. He's improving fight to fight. I know he's got that loss to Gunther on his record, but, look, Gunther, he's a tough guy, man. Gunther's got a serious chin. But Smith, he's bounced back from that fight. He switched camps. He's also out there at Factory X. And I mean, the way he's been looking out in the open in space, man, this guy's extremely fast, man. So, I think Maestro definitely needs to get this to the ground. But if Maestro wants to go to war with him, we still don't fully know what Miss Chin is like in a war. We don't know how his heart's like in a war. We don't know how his takedown defense is in a war. So, I guess that's something Maestro might be able to exploit. But I think Smith's going to be too powerful, too fast. I think Maestro in the early stages in this fight needs to be very careful because one mistake against Smith, it might be over. He might be screaming early stoppage, man. So, I am going to pick Devontae Smith, but, as far as the betting perspective, it is a dog or pass situation.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I've been very impressed with Devontae Smith, and it's funny because you go back and listen to my last breakdown of one of his fights against Erosa, and, I was talking a lot of shit about that John Gunther loss, but one thing I will say, because no matter what, he's 9-1, 10-1 now. Even if he goes 20-1, that John Gunther loss will always be on that record. But that being said, man, for a kid that's as talented as him, as athletic, and is as hard of a worker, more importantly, as he is, I think that 2 years is plenty of time to make night and day improvements. Because obviously, with that Gunther fight, it wasn't because he was not the better fighter or anything like that. He whooped the dude's ass and gassed out to a point where he had nothing when he got taken down. So that's an issue that can be corrected for a young fighter. And obviously you mentioned he switched camps, which was the step that he needed to take. And now, it's funny, I was watching that fight against Erosa with the number one lightweight in Georgia, Robert King Hale, and he had never seen that fight before. And he was calling for the finishing combo the entire time. He was saying 1-2, 1-2, and then 2 seconds later, Devontae did land that 1-2, and he knocked out Erosa out cold. So, I mean, this kid Devontae Smith, if he lands on your chin, you might be waking up looking up at the lights, and Dong Young Kim has been KO'd more than once in his UFC career. So, man, Dong Young Kim, it comes down to that approach, man, because if he comes out here like he did against Polo Reyes and wants to show how tough his chin is, wants to show that I don't care if your name is King Cage, I can stand and bang with you too, it might be Dong Young Kim that's looking up at the lights. But if Dong Young Kim decides he wants to start diving on some legs, he wants to make this a grueling, grinding decision, he might have some success. But that being said, I got Devontae Smith via knockout. Now, next up in the light heavyweight division, we got Jimmy the Brute Crute. He's minus 130, and the comeback on Sam Alvey is plus 110. Shaq, Sam Alvey's had 16 UFC fights. This is Jim Crute's second UFC fight, but he is the favorite here. I got to know your perspective.
Yeah, I think Jim Crute had a good debut against Paul Craig in the manner in which he beat him by submission. That was definitely great. As far as this fight's concerned, I don't know if that fight's really that relevant. Paul Craig, I think he's a tough guy, but I do think he's very low level. And the fact that, him and Crute had a fairly tough fight makes me assume Crute's around that level. He's still got a long ways to go. He's definitely improving. He's young. He's going to be improving. Definitely couldn't be improving at a rapid rate. This guy, I've heard him say willingly that he likes to take damage, he likes to eat punches, and he hopes that this fight's a bloodbath. And that's the type of, mental game he has. He's definitely a very tough, aggressive guy. I think his stand-up's powerful. I definitely think he leaves a lot of openings. Definitely likes to keep his left hand down a little bit. But one thing he's got going for him is aggression, especially in this fight. Aggression, hunger, volume. Alvey, we know, will just sit back with his back on the fence. The thing with Alvey is, it sounds easy. It definitely sounds, the game plan to beat Alvey has been laid out. All you have to do is pretty much tip and run against this guy, and he's going to lose a decision. It's these guys that stand in front of him and, make these stupid mistakes that, like Vellante, like Marcin Prachnio, or guys with, suspect chins like Marquardt, these guys that, stand in front of them and, they want to bang it out for 15 minutes. Of course, there's been a couple guys like Little Nog, Derek Brunson that do end up knocking them out. But these guys that want to stand up with them 15 minutes and, push them with that back on the fence and go combo for combo, sometimes they end up getting dropped. And the fact of the matter is he's 10-6, and, a lot of those guys have gone on to loss. It's the guys that stick to the game plan. And when you look at those type of guys, they're very, very disciplined guys. I know he does have the loss to Tom Watson on his record, but UFC debut. But as of recently, man, it's been the Ramazan Amievs, the guys that are very patient, know when to pick their shots. My only skepticism in this fight is Jimmy Crute is very aggressive, and I think there's a chance that the percentages of Alvey being able to land that one clean counter shot might be raised up a little bit as in comparison to his other fights, like against Ramazan, Elias, etc. One thing I'll definitely say is if Crute doesn't get caught or doesn't get consistently dropped in 2 of the 3 rounds, that he'll most likely win this fight because Alvey's output is severely low. So that's definitely one thing that Crute has going for him. But with that being said, it sounds a lot easier than it actually is. So, I am going to go with Crute by decision. But his striking defense definitely worries me. I definitely think, he can take Alvey down here and there, but I don't think he's going to be able to keep Alvey down. And I think that could possibly, lead to him getting tired and to leading him to making a bigger mistake, trying to close the distance. So, I am a little skeptical, but I do think, 185 Alvey and 205 Alvey, I think he might be a little bit chinnier. So at 205, but in hindsight, man, Little Nog only loses to the best, man. So, we'll see, man. But I will go with Crute by decision.
Man, I cannot wait for this fight. I've been impressed with Jimmy the Brute Crute since I saw that Contender Series fight. And for everyone listening at home, you might need to watch that fight without the commentary, because Paul Felder's commentary that Jim Crute fight was absolutely atrocious to a point where I just couldn't believe it. Jim Crute's teeing off on this guy, hitting him with everything but the kitchen sink, leg kicks, high kicks, body shots, spins, everything. And Paul Felder was shitting on him. Paul Felder was talking about what the other guy was doing. The other guy's getting his ass beat. So I just, you gotta turn down Paul Felder's commentary, no doubt about it. Because what I saw from Jim Crute in that fight was, I saw a young kid who was trying to emulate Rob Whittaker's style, who was trying to dart in there with big left hooks, finish up the combinations with leg kicks, mix it up to the head with the high kick. And you know what's something you need to beat a guy like Sam Alvey, right? It's a high volume of kicks, because the blueprint's been laid since his UFC debut on how to beat this guy. Yeah, if you walk forward with your hands down, you want to stand in the pocket with Sam Alvey, it's going to be 50-50. He has a very hard right hand counter. He catches you with that right hook. chances are you will go to sleep. But you come in here with the right game plan, you leg kick this guy, you circle on the outside, you mix in your jabs, your straight punches, and from time to time mix in a couple takedowns too, I think you can beat this guy. And people talk about how Sam Alvey has this great defense. No doubt about it. Statistically speaking, 84%, you can't argue that. You can't say shit. That's a great takedown defense. But if we're going to sit here and act like we've never seen him get taken down before, that would be a lie as well. Because what about that time when he fought my boy Rashad Evans? And that wasn't Rashad Evans' championship run, Sugar Rashad. I'm talking about Rashad on the losing streak, past his prime, 2 fights away from retirement. That guy was taking down Sam Alvey, okay? Not to mention, one judge thought Gian Vellante beat Sam Alvey. One judge thought that Rashad Evans in 2017 beat Sam Alvey. So the guy's having very competitive fights with fighters that he should be walking through, man. And that being said, with Jim Crute, again, like you said, it might be kind of simple. It comes down to, can Jim Crute avoid getting caught with that counter right hand? I think he does, man. I think that when you have a guy like Sam Greco as your head coach, and you guys don't know about Sam Greco, there's a guy that back in the day went to a split decision with Lyoto Machida. So, he's got guys in there that Jim Crute's got guys coaching him that know the game, know to come in with a proper game plan. And you saw his last fight against Paul Craig, and it's funny because going into that fight, I mentioned how Jim Crute is a brown belt under John Jacques Machado. So if that fight were to hit the ground, we'd be completely fine. It turned out we were right. I mean, we swept him, submitted him, the whole bit. That was a different kind of fight because Paul Craig's going to shoot from the second the bell rings. Well, Sam Alvey's not going to shoot. Sam Alvey's going to back himself up into the fence, look for that counter the entire time. So Jim Crute just has to be aware of that. Look, man, don't keep my left hand down when I'm exiting the pocket. Don't let him get off on a counter right hand, and we win this fight 9 times out of 10. So I definitely got Jim Crute here, but I don't have him by decision. I have him via knockout. Now, if it does go to the scorecards, we are in Australia, Jim Crute's backyard. Historically speaking, Sam Alvey doesn't do the best when fights go to decision. So I know, in our back pocket, if we go to the scorecards, Crute will win that. I also know that Crute is a brown belt and has better jiu-jitsu than Sam Alvey. We hit the mat, we're fine there too. But you and I both know this is going to be a stand-up fight, and they're probably going to stand and trade until one man falls or 3 straight rounds. So for that reason, I do have Jim Crute via knockout. I believe it'll be a head kick KO. But if they go 3, I have him winning a decision as well. Now, next up in the women's flyweight division, we got Montana De La Rosa. She's minus 260, and the comeback on Nadia Kassem is plus 220. Now, Shaq, I know we cashed that Nadia Kassem in her UFC debut against Alex Chambers, but she ain't fighting Alex Chambers no more, so I gotta know, man. You think she's gonna come through as a plus 220 dog here, or do you think the minus 260 favorite rolls?
Yeah, I think Nadia Kassem is also another fighter with a lot of work to do. I think her fight with Chambers is just a beneficiary of Chambers being, a soccer mom that, is just not gonna win a UFC fight, man. So, that's why we better. That's why we better in that spot, man. I think Chambers was pretty much a dud. So, I think De La Rosa's got this fight pretty much in the bag. I think there's a big gap in between the two in wrestling. De La Rosa's got some serious wrestling credentials. Of course, there's a chance she's going to have to escape an armbar too. But, I think De La Rosa is just the more well-rounded fighter at this stage, the more developed fighter, the more experienced fighter. Nadia has only been past the 1 minute mark in a fight once, and that one time, like I said, was against Alex Chambers. So I got De La Rosa winning this fight. I think, Kassem could, have some success with that left kick here and there, but I just think there's a big gap in between the two in wrestling. I think Montana's got that takedown in her back pocket in this fight, so I'm going to go with Montana by. I'm gonna actually say finish. Montana by finish.
Shaq, initially when this fight was a dead pick'em on the opener, I was like, oh man, I gotta bet Montana here. But now that heavy action has come in on Montana De La Rosa, she's a minus 260 favorite when she opened minus 120, Shaq. So now, even though I am favoring Montana, I am thinking that this is a dog or pass situation. And I also want to bring up a couple things. So Montana De La Rosa, obviously we know she has this fight with Nadia Kassem this Saturday in Australia. She's on her Twitter calling out Paige Van Zandt. I believe she's completely overlooking her opponent in this spot, and she's looking to what's next. And, against Nadia Kassem, maybe she can get away with it because when we saw Kassem in her debut, green to the point where you and I were like, she probably does need to go back to that regional scene and get some more experience. Because the person she fought was Alex Chambers, who, like you said, man, as a soccer mom, Alex Chambers will lose every UFC fight she's in. She's brought in to lose, a sacrificial lamb. That's what Nadia got, and it was still a 29-28 decision, Shaq. We were expecting a first-round submission, no problem, and it was a very, very close fight. As far as Montana De La Rosa, I want to sit here and act like first takedown, the fight's going to be over shortly after, but I'm just not convinced that that's the case, man. I mean, Montana was having a very close fight. I say close. It was back and forth with Rachel Ostovich, who's a sub 500 fighter, man. She's got a 4-5 record,
but,
dude.
Real quick though, look what Ostovich was doing to Paige Van Zandt before she quit.
Very true, but I mean, how do you rate Paige Van Zandt, though? You know what I'm saying? But that's true. It did happen. We cannot deny these facts. But it's just, I'm not convinced that this is going to be the bell-to-bell domination that everyone's making it out to be. At a pick-em price, yeah, I favor Montana De La Rosa for all the issues we've mentioned with Nadia Kassem. She's only 4-1, man. She's barely had 5 fights, dude, and she's in the UFC.
Not to mention, we know some things that Nadia was doing in this layoff. Yeah, she was definitely setting herself back.
Yeah, she's definitely pretty wild outside the cage. That's the word on the street. That's all I'll say about that, Shaq. So we know there's a lot of distractions there. I'm just going to keep it short. I'm going to go with Montana De La Rosa because I've been favoring her from the jump in this spot, and I simply think she's the more advanced fighter in this point in their respective careers. But I think that minus 260 is a little bit crazy. But who knows? Maybe she goes out there and steamrolls her, and maybe I'm wrong about that. But I definitely think there's going to be some back-and-forth moments, so I'd be careful laying the chalk in this spot. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got Rani Yahya. He's minus 110. And Ricky Simón is also minus 110. So, Shaq, this fight's a dead pick'em. You got the jiu-jitsu black belt versus the state champion wrestler. The state champion wrestler says he wants to keep this fight standing. He wants to do a sprawl and brawl clinic. And we know, historically speaking, if you want to beat one of these jiu-jitsu guys, that's definitely a good way to do it. So I got to know, man, you think that Ricky Simón can stay disciplined enough to not fuck up one time on the mat versus Rani Yahya?
Yeah, Rani falls into that category of, jiu-jitsu black belt that, has had problems in the past with his cardio and, flopping to his back, et cetera, et cetera. Ricky, these last 2 fights, he's been looking good. He's had 2 real tough fights. A lot of those guys probably project out, to be better than Rani, even though Rani's had a great career. He's like 11-3, 12-3. But we know Montel, that was a serious win for Ricky, man. Montel is going to be a great fighter down the line, and Ricky proved that he's a strong wrestler. He showed that he's hard-nosed, he can wrestle, and that he can wrestle all day. So, Ricky's definitely a top prospect. I would definitely agree on that. Rani Yahya, this guy is very underestimatable. This guy, just like his last fight against Luke Sanders, I think he was the dog in that fight as well. He's the dog a lot, man. And a lot of his fights, he's a guy that seems like he's had trouble with tough wrestlers in the past. But one thing that we can't forget is his last loss against Soto. Soto kind of has a jiu-jitsu background. Now, Ricky, in his fight against Merab, there were some times where Merab shot in and he, shot that typical takedown that Rani likes to shoot, try to wrap up a single. And, he definitely took his back a couple times. Ricky definitely slipped him off, and he relied on that same exact escape throughout the entire fight. Now, the reason what would worry me is, against a guy like Rani, who, a serious black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, I mean, you do that in the early stages of the fight, I mean, he might wrap those hooks in. Like, there is a chance of that. Like, he's that good at Jiu-Jitsu. And not to mention that, although I think Merab's a great fighter, Merab is a guy that, I don't want to say doesn't think in there, but he's out of control, man. Merab kind of... He doesn't really make adjustments. He's a ball of energy. I think a good fighter would have been able to make adjustments, especially a guy like Rani with a lot more different array of techniques, man, would have been able to capitalize on that spot. And, Montel, another great performance against Ricky. But let's not forget that Montel also took that fight on a week or two notice. So, I think Ricky Simone's definitely got some good skills. I definitely think he's got better hands than Hani. But another thing not to mention is Hani's stand-up's getting better a little bit, man. I think Hani, to beat him, you have to capitalize when you get him back on the feet. And that's something that these guys fail to do because Hani's stand-up is, getting a little better, man. I think even though he doesn't really have any knockouts on his record, he's got a way of swinging really wild to kind of spook these guys out. Just like his last fight against Sanders, swung a big hook combo and kind of stunned Sanders a little bit, and then that's all he needs for his little window to get his takedown, man. So, I think, if you have dog money, if you, have dog money on either side, like good dog money on either side, I definitely think either side, has a chance to win. I think it's a fairly evenly matched fight. I just think that, sometimes these vets get, super underestimated against these prospects with I don't want to say little experience because I do think Ricky has a bright future, and I'm picking Ricky to win this fight. It's just from a betting perspective, sometimes these vets come through and teach these prospects a lesson. The prospect has got to, really have it stamped down that he's not going to engage in all the other mistakes that all the other prospects that the vet's beaten. So, I will take Ricky, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a dog or pass situation.
Man, anytime you get the classic wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy, it's such an intriguing matchup. I can point to two examples with Damian Maia. You see Damian Maia versus Chael Sonnen, goes out there, taps him out in the first round. But then you see Damian Maia against Colby Covington, and that was the sprawl and brawl clinic that Ricky Simone needs to employ here against Rani Yahya, because that is the surefire way to beat that aggressive jiu-jitsu guy. Now, as far as the stand-up's concerned, because I know Rani Yahya has got that black belt in Muay Thai, but I want to talk about black belts in Muay Thai real quick because, listen, every jiu-jitsu school, there's the belt ranking system no matter what. So you can always trace the lineage and know if your jiu-jitsu instructor is legit or not. Like just based off where they got promoted from, if they're legit or if they ordered their black belt off the internet or got their black belt in a cereal box. Right away. Whereas with Muay Thai black belts, not every Muay Thai gym has a belt ranking system. So we don't even know who gave this guy his Muay Thai black belt. Shaq, look, man, I mean, he's an experienced guy. He's had close to 15 UFC fights. I mean, if you fight him with your hands down, he will catch you. I know officially he doesn't have any knockout wins, but between you and me, he knocked out Johnny Bedford. I know it says headbutt, but it was a fist to the chin, so he did knock out Johnny Bedford. But as far as this matchup is concerned, I don't think the stand-up's going to be Rani Yahya's big weapon here. I think it is going to come down to the grappling exchanges. And when we have seen Simone get taken down, he does one of the classic get-ups where you kind of have to give up your back for a second to get back up. And, hey, that can work against jiu-jitsu guys. A guy we're going to talk about later, Robert Whitaker, when he fought Jacare Souza, he had to give up his back for a quick sec to get back up to the feet. Just because you give up your back for that quick sec doesn't necessarily mean the jiu-jitsu guy is going to get his hooks in right away and you're fucked. You just have to be very slick about it. Do not let him get those hooks in, stand back up, and separate like Rob Whitaker did to Jacare. If Ricky Simone is able to do that, it's going to come down to this one little exchange where Ricky Simone's going to get taken down, and as he tries to get back up, he has to sacrifice position. He has to give up his back. During that moment, will Rani Yahya be able to capitalize, get those hooks in, and possibly choke him out? Or will Ricky Simone be able to separate and then be dealing with a more gassed out Rani Yahya, and then from there start to beat him up? Because it's not that these jiu-jitsu guys have bad cardio. That's not even the case. It's that to do the kind of moves that they want to do, to force you down to the ground and to dominate you there, that takes so much energy. That's why you often see guys like Damian Maia and Rani Yahya huffing and puffing when things don't go their way, even Jacare Souza. So, that being said, I think that Ricky's a very smart kid. He's already tasted defeat on the regional scene. He knows what that's like. He knows what it means to bounce back. So for all that reason, man, this being, I believe, his 16th pro fight, I do think that at this current point, he is experienced enough to deal with a guy like Rani Yahya. And I know people will bring up the Joe Soto fight, and I won't. Even though I cashed that plus 180 on Soto, I won't, because like you said, Soto is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and he's a competitive jiu-jitsu guy. He's competing in those EBI tournaments, so he did a lot of jiu-jitsu shit to nullify Hanayaya's game, whereas Ricky, it's going to be straight wrestling. And the wrestler is the stronger man here, but it comes down to technique because you know how high level Hanayaya's black belt is. So I do think Ricky Simón will get past this challenge, but man, I do think there will also be some very sketchy moments, and I really do think it comes down to how he approaches getting back up to the feet. Is he going to give up his back? Is he going to give up those hooks or not? That's really what it comes down to in my eyes, Shaq. I will go with Ricky Simón via decision. Co-main event of the evening. We got Israel, the last stylebender, Adesanya. He's minus 650, and the comeback on Anderson Silva is plus 475. Well, Shaq, these are two of the best strikers on planet Earth. Fighting in the co-main event, you got the former champ Anderson versus what many people consider to be the future champ Israel. So I gotta know, man. You think this line's a little wide, or you think it's justified?
Anderson is a one of the GOATs. Like I said, Israel's been getting better fight to fight, and kind of drastically better fight to fight. Like, this guy comes out and he takes care of business against guys and manners that we really don't see, man. I mean, what he did to Tavares was, kind of shocking. I mean, I predicted that he would win that fight, but the manner in which he did it was pretty eye-opening. And then the Brunson fight was a nice little easy first-round KO. And Anderson, Anderson's best strength at this point is just that aura about him, man. He likes to play these little mind games. And, he's trying to play those little mind games with Israel right now, trying to make him fanboy out. And it's going to be interesting to see if he makes it work. Anderson's got a way of punking guys out, just like how he did against Brunson, making them, gun shy, making them, stare at the legend. And it's going to be interesting. But, I actually think Israel's not that type of guy, man. I think Israel, I think he's just playing nice, man. But I think when they get in there, man, I think it's going to be a different scenario, man. I think no matter what Anderson wants to do, I don't think his chin's going to hold up against a guy like Israel, man. Israel's too pinpoint. He's too sharp. This guy can land strikes from all type of funny angles, man. His jabs, his straight rights. This guy's head movement's insane. So, of course, he can get caught with a big shot, but I think that's going to be against guys that are much more aggressive. Against guys that commit a lot more than Anderson, man. But I got a lot of respect for Anderson, but I think Israel does get a knockout here.
Well, man, it's going to be unbelievable how it plays out. So these are two of the top strikers in the world. And joining me right this second is the top striker in the Southeast. I'm talking about Robert King Hale. Robert just walked in right now. I got to know, man, you got Israel Adesanya or Anderson Silva?
I have Anderson Silva, second round KO. The reason being, I feel like the experience is going to kick in. Anderson's much more seasoned in there. Israel Adesanya, he hasn't been to the deep waters as Anderson has taken people before. I think Anderson Silva is going to take him to waters that he ain't been to before. And I just believe, like Shaq said before, the aura he brings in there is just so much. It's just so intense. If you don't know how to handle it, you're going to get faded. And both guys are long, rangy. Anderson moves better than, I believe, than Israel. Israel is more technical. He likes to be composed, and he likes to use his technique to throw people off and to cut. And he's very good at cutting angles as well. But I believe the shots he's gonna throw are gonna miss Anderson Silva because he's a little slower than Anderson Silva
right now.
Yeah, throughout the age, not just because of the age, but just because I believe Anderson Silva is, like I said, more seasoned, more. He's gonna know where to move his head. He's not gonna keep his head on center line like Derek Brunson did with Israel Adesanya. And I believe when Israel misses, Anderson's going to capitalize. So that's why I'm calling it a second round knockout, because it's the first round they're going to feel each other out. We all know this. This usually happens in big fights. They feel each other out first before anything happens. But biggest chance for Israel to win is the first round KO. If not, Anderson's taking it.
Oh, shit. Well, we got a bold prediction here by Robert Hill. For me, man, listen, nothing will make me happier than seeing Anderson the Spider Silva come out here and not just beat Israel Adesanya, but knock him out. And that's not because I have anything against Israel at all. I love Israel, and I'll be rooting for him in most of his future fights. It's just that when you're talking about the GOAT Anderson Silva. And it's not like it's set at a pick'em either. If it's set at a pick'em, maybe we consider betting on Israel. But at this current line where Anderson's plus 475, I mean, just as a fan of the sport, I will be rooting for Anderson Silva 100% to come out here and knock him out. But as far as how I actually think it's going to go, I cannot ignore Father Time, no doubt about it. Israel's the fresher guy at this point, has the higher trajectory just because, he's making his title run right now, and Anderson already had all that. But one thing I will comment is that I know people like to talk about all of Anderson Silva's recent losses, and aside from the Bisping loss where, you and I, Shaq, we had that plus 265 dog money on Bisping, and we both know he got knocked out by that flying knee. Aside from that loss to Bisping, he's only really lost to wrestlers. Chris Weidman, Daniel Cormier. You heard Daniel Cormier in that fight. So one thing I know about Israel Adesanya is he's not going to come out here and shoot on Anderson Silva. He's going to give Anderson they're both going to give each other the fight they want. And it comes down to who's the better striker in this spot. Now, I do kind of question the durability of Anderson, but I will say this. This is one thing I've been saying to Shaq all week, even though it's a different sport. If I were to ask you right now, who has been KO'd stiff more recently? The answer is Israel Adesanya. The answer is not Anderson Silva, but that was in a completely different sport. Now, I know this is a little cheeky mind game, and it's kind of funny, but listen, Anderson's been playing cheeky mind games his whole career. He brought in Alex Pereira, the man that knocked out Israel Adesanya, to be his main training partner for this camp. And I don't think, that Alex is really going to change much. I think it was more of, just to fuck with Israel a little bit. Now at the open workouts, he's hitting pads with Alex Pereira. So it's just kind of funny. I love how he's messing with Israel in that respect. I do have to favor Israel just because of the current states that they're in their respective careers. But as a fan, I am rooting for Anderson Silva 100%. Well, now we got to talk about the main event of the evening, because we got Robert the Reaper Whittaker. He's minus 235, and the comeback on Kelvin Gastelum is plus 195. Shaq, Robert Whittaker has been absolutely unbelievable ever since he moved up to 185 pounds. I mean, at 170, he always has so much potential, but ever since he moved up to 85, undefeated, and he's the current reigning defending UFC champion. So I got to know, man, taking on another man who moved up from 170 to 85, and Kelvin Gastelum, who, whenever he's in a fire fight, he seems to win. How do you think this one's going to go down?
Yeah, man, Rob's, been getting better fight to fight. He's definitely, I would say the more tested fighter of the two. Not to say that Kelvin, his wins are definitely great. He's got wins over Bisping, Belfort, Jacare. But I think those two fights with Yoel definitely tested Rob mentally, to a point that, he definitely proved his mental toughness, man, because he got hit with some shots in that fight that, most guys that we've seen in the past would definitely go down to. And he didn't, man. He weathered the storm. That fight was extremely close. And just due to the fact that he had more volume than Yoel basically took the first two rounds off in that second fight and kind of had to put himself so behind that he had to win every round from that point on out. And he couldn't seal that fourth round off, even though he made Rob do two severe chicken dances in that fight, man. So, one thing I'll say about Rob is I think offensively he's probably the best striker at 185, top one or two strikers at 185. But defensively, I disagree. And I think his defense is, I don't want to say declining a little bit, but I would definitely say his chin is present throughout the course of the 5-round fight, man. I think, when he cuts his angles, his hands are down. Just pretty much throughout the entire fight, his hands are down, man. And when you fight a former welterweight like Kelvin, who we know at 85 is definitely, speed-wise, definitely one of the faster 85ers. He's definitely accurate with his 1-2. We've seen what his 1-2 has done to people in the past. And, one mistake with Kelvin with your hands down, that might be it, man. So, from a betting perspective, I definitely think it's a dog or pass situation. I'm not sure anyone has this much of a percentage of a percentage to beat Kelvin Gastelum in a fight. I respect Rob Whittaker, but I'm actually going to go on the upset, man. I think that Rob's chin is I think his chin's good, but I don't think his chin's going to be the same as it once was after those Yoel fights. I think that when Kelvin does land his shots, that Rob will feel it. Whether he gets knocked out, I don't know, but I actually do think he's going to get knocked out. Like I said, I think his chin's present throughout the fight. Of course, Kelvin's chin is present as well, man. It's going to be a pissing contest, but actually think Kelvin has the better chin, so I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum to be the new UFC middleweight champion.
Wow, so he's predicting the upset. That's quite the pick right there, my man. So Robert Hale, I gotta know, man. Your teammate Clint Hester had a fight of the night with Robert Whitaker. You seen what Whitaker's accomplished since then? You think Kelvin Gastelum's got enough to dethrone him?
I think again, Kevin's gonna get there. Kevin has never been to 5. Well, he has never been to the 5 rounds. I believe Robert's gonna take him to 5 rounds, and I believe Robert's going to scathe through this with a decision win because I believe Kevin has his days. Like I said, he has his days where he goes on knockout sprees. Robert, he knocked out Michael Bisping, Vitor, but when it comes to the big time shows, he for some reason he does not show up. I believe he's gonna be hesitant. He's gonna be gun shy, and he's gonna get outpointed more than. I don't believe nobody's gonna knock nobody's out, but just because of how tough both are, they're gonna both come forward. They're gonna hit each other with big shots, but in the end, I believe they're not going. I believe it's gonna go decision, and it's gonna go Robert Whitaker's way.
So he's picking and still by decision.
And still by decision.
For me, this is an extremely tough fight to call just because of how the styles match up. Now, I've gone on record many times and told you guys that Robert Whitaker is my favorite fighter, but none of that really matters when we're breaking down this matchup because he might be my favorite fighter, but I'm also not going to sit here and act like this isn't the toughest fight he's had in a very long time. Granted, he did just fight Yoel twice, but it's just a different matchup completely. And what I mean by that with Yoel, every single thing you hit Yoel with, when you punch Yoel as hard as you can, it's going to hurt you more than it hurts him because the guy is just made out of steel. So I feel like, Robert head kicking Yoel, yeah, it closed Yoel's eye, but it also broke Robert's foot. You know what I mean? Like, that's, Yoel is something else, man. But as far as this matchup's concerned, one thing I will say, Robert does fight with his hands down, and he does have unbelievable distance. But man, someone that's a good combo puncher that can counter might be able to capitalize. And that's what Kelvin Gastelum brings to the table. Because if you watch some of Rob's other fights, for example, the Jacare fight, Jacare is an amazing fighter, and him and Kelvin had a war too. But as far as Rob and Jacare were concerned, Rob didn't really have to worry about getting hit with too many big shots. He just had to worry about, look, if the fight hit the mat, this guy might tap us out. Whereas when Kelvin fought Jacare, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and say that Rob has better takedown defense than Kelvin, a better get-up game than Kelvin. He's just more athletic than Kelvin. So when Kelvin got taken down against Jacare, he didn't pop right back up like Rob did, but he survived all the bad spots. I mean, he was in side control bottom against Jacare. Normally, Jacare gets on top of you like that, fight's going to be over shortly after. You've seen it many times. Well, Kelvin was able to survive that, and I know people bring up how, Jacare was landing a lot more shots on Kelvin than he was on Rob Whitaker, and that's 100% true. I cannot dispute that fact. However, there's a reason being why he landed more shots on Kelvin. It's because of the kind of fight it was. I mean, like I said, the reason I brought up Rob's takedown defense compared to Kelvin's is because when Jacare tried to grapple against Rob immediately shut that shit down right away and made him work to the point where he was huffing and puffing. Now look, Kelvin made him work too. Jacare was huffing and puffing as well, but it's just a different style of matchup. Kelvin's Mexican. Kelvin likes to stand in that pocket. He doesn't mind eating a couple shots to land shots of his own because his chin is so fucking good that you hit this guy as hard as you can. Chances are he's not even going to move an inch. He's going to stay right there. Then he's going to counter you with his left hand, his right hook. And that's when guys get knocked out. So this is a really interesting matchup, Shaq. I'm very, very intrigued by what's going to happen in these pocket exchanges because, yes, Kelvin is the more hittable guy, no doubt about it, but his chin is also better than Rob Whitaker's. I will go ahead and say that. Yes, both men have been dropped. I remember the Rick Story fight with Kelvin. I didn't forget all that. But you know what else I remember, Shaq? I remember the Court McGee and Stephen Wonderboy fight. One of them has been unconscious before, and it was not Kelvin Gastelum, right? So I'm just saying here that, even though it's at a different weight class, I know Kelvin gets hit a lot, but out of the two, one has been unconscious, and it was not Kelvin Gastelum. Now, moving up to 85, I know the chin does improve, and you saw those shots he took against Yoel. They dropped him, they wobbled him, but they didn't finish him. So that's credit, iron chin. My question is, how many more shots can you take clean on the chin and still stay there? Because, once again, unlike these past matchups that these guys have had, I don't really believe there's going to be a lot of grappling in this fight. I really, truly believe they're going to stand and bang until one man falls or someone wins the decision. Now, Shaq is picking Kelvin to win via knockout. My boy Robert Hill is picking Whitaker via decision. And I see both of those as possible outcomes, no doubt about it, because I do think that both guys have such good chins that if they go all 5 rounds, there is a chance that, hey, this is in Australia, and Robert Whitaker probably does have a little bit more volume. He mixes it up a bit more. He can definitely go out there and win that decision, no questions asked. On the flip side, he fights with his hands down, and Jacare might be too slow to capitalize on that. Derek Brunson might be too sloppy to capitalize on that. Brad Tavares might be too sloppy to capitalize on that. But one thing I'll say about Kelvin Gastelum, he might not be the best wrestler, he might not be the best this and that, but one thing he's fucking good at is his counterpunching, man. His counterpunching in the pocket, he's one of the best in the division at that. And that's where I think this matchup is so intriguing, because I see this minus 235 next to Rob's name, and most times, yeah, go lay that juice on Rob, no doubt about it. But here against Kelvin, it's different just because of how the styles match up. And I really do think that Kelvin Gastelum is live for a knockout here, based on everything I've been saying, with how Rob exits the pocket, with how he fights with his hands down, and with the superior counter-striking ability of Kelvin Gastelum. That's a definite possibility. From a betting perspective, I believe it is dog or pass. Now it's just about, are you going to put your foot down and really pick someone to go out there and dethrone the great Robert Whitaker? Because, he is an unbelievable fighter. But stylistically, I think this is the toughest fight he's ever had. And I know he's coming off 2 Yoel fights. Like, you guys don't need to remind me. I know that. But Yoel's a different matchup. Yoel's an Olympic wrestler. Kelvin Gastelum's a Mexican counter-striker, man. Oh, man. I really do think Kelvin's live for the knockout here. But if he doesn't get it, Robert might win this decision, though. So from a betting perspective, this is dog or pass. And for that reason, I will go with the dog. But holy shit, right? Like, the fact that I'm acting like it's 50-50, that means that automatically I have to go with a plus 195 dog in this spot. But picking against Whitaker doesn't always sit well with me, because it is Whitaker, He's that damn good. He's only 27, 28 years old. It's not like he's aging or any shit like that. He's definitely coming off a war. So now it's going to be another fucking war. I think he might get caught here, Shaq. That's all I got to say. Now we got to hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, another week, another fight, and this time it's Kelvin Gastelum challenging for the middleweight title versus Robert Whitaker. How's it going, man?
Good, man. Coming off a rough week thanks to Moicano, but ready to bounce back, get a dub, make some money, and we got some decent fights. So looking forward to talking about them with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This title fight, right off the bat, 2 former welterweights in Whitaker and Gastelum. Now they're fighting for the middleweight championship. I have a feeling they're going to stand and bang until one man falls, or possibly someone can win a decision here. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a stand-up fight for however long it lasts. But I like Whitaker. I just think he's a better fighter everywhere. As long as he doesn't get knocked out, he wins this fight. So I think it's KO or bust for Gastelum. And if Whitaker can take Yoel's best shots, you got to think he could take Kelvin's best shots as well. So I'm definitely going with Whitaker as my pick. I think it's probably by decision, though, and that's my issue on DraftKings, is if this is a 15-minute striking match with no knockdowns, not 15 minutes, 25 minutes with no knockdowns, I don't know how high Whitaker can score. I doubt he scores much more than 100 if that's the case. I'm thinking he's kind of capped at like 10x, really, and I don't know if that's going to win you a tournament at $8,900, because there's some fighters below him, if they finish, that could kick him off the optimal lineup. So the last few days I've kind of changed my preferred pick over to Gastelum, because if Gastelum wins, no matter how he gets it done, he'll be on the winning lineup at $7,300. And Whitaker does have the hands low approach. So if Gastelum catches him, drops him, finishes him, that's probably going to be a close to 100 points. And if he gets that at 7,300, he's for sure on that $30,000 lineup. And that's what I'm chasing this week. I'm chasing that 30,000. So I've got more Gastelum actually than I do Whitaker. My issue is I think I'm losing that fight. I think I'm taking the L. I'm just doing it more in case he can get the knockout because there's not a lot of dogs I like on this card. So Gastelum's been one that I've been clicking on.
So the co-main event is Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya. Now, Kyle, it's not often you see a 6,600 price tag next to Anderson Silva's name. The reason being is because he's taking on Israel Adesanya. But do you think he's going to be very popular in DraftKings based on that price, or do you think he's going to be low owned?
I mean, I think his name alone will make him popular with the casuals at least. I don't know, though. I'm really struggling to figure out the ownership on this fight. But yeah, if you would have told me I was going to get Silva at $6,600 versus another striker, 5 years ago, I'd put all my money on that. But the problem is Israel is just the better striker, especially at this point in their career. I mean, Silva's 43 years old, has been away from the game. He has not looked great recently. And I think Israel's the next champ. I think Whitaker wins. I think Israel wins. I think they get matched up next, and I'm going to take Israel in that one too. I think Silva's just got a bad matchup here over in Australia too, so everyone's going to be behind Adesanya. Man, I don't know if he gets the knockout, which is what we're going to need at $9,600, but he definitely could. So I'm going to have to roster him a little bit. I just don't think you have to go all in on this guy because if he does not get the knockout, he's probably not going to pay off the $9,600. And as the most expensive guy on the card, that's what we're going to need. We're going to need well over 100 points from him. Not sure that's going to be possible. So if you're making one lineup, I don't know. I'd probably just go ahead and fade this fight altogether. I'm probably going to have like 100 lineups. So I'm going to have some Israel, but I'm also going to have like one or two Silvas just in case he can get that lucky knockout. I think if the fight hit the ground, maybe he's live for a submission. I just don't see how he gets it to the ground. So I think we're really relying on the knockout, which is why I would only throw him in like one or two of my 100 lineups. Fade the fight or Israel. That's kind of how I would go with it.
So Ricky Simone's taking on Rani Yahya. And, I think we know the deal here. It's wrestler versus jiu-jitsu. You think Ricky can stuff or not?
Oh, man, I think he can, yeah. And I think he's got the better striking for sure. It's just, man, all Yahya needs is to get one leg, and then he finds his way up to a submission. So it's real scary picking against Yahya. So I won't be fading him for that reason because at $8,000, any submission from him is going to – I don't know if it's going to put him on the optimal lineup, but I would think he gets 90 or so points with a submission. And at 8K, that's what I like to see. So I will have some Yahya, but I like Simon more. My issue is I don't see him taking it to the ground. So if this is going to be him just stuffing takedowns and keeping it on the feet with no knockout, I don't see him scoring very highly. So this is kind of like that Whitaker-Gastelum fight for me where I'm picking Simon to win or Simone to win, but Yahya as the cheaper guy I think has the better chance of getting on that $30,000 lineup, if that makes sense. But Simone's going to be my pick, and I'll say by unanimous decision.
Makes a lot of sense, man. And interestingly enough, this fight between Montana De La Rosa and Nadia Kassem, when it first opened up, as far as the betting lines, it was minus 120 apiece on the opener. Currently, it's minus 260 Montana De La Rosa, plus 220 and Nadia Kassem. And you look at DraftKings, you see 8,800 for De La Rosa, 7,400 for Kassem. I gotta know, man, do you at all see any value in Kassem based on the fact that she was minus 120 on the opener, or do you simply think they were wrong on that line and the public acted accordingly?
No, I think there's some value on her actually because if this fight doesn't hit the ground, I think she wins it. I think she's the better striker overall. I think she could even finish the fight on the feet. I'm not too impressed with De La Rosa on the feet. It's just the problem is if this fight hits the ground, it's probably going to be a submission by De La Rosa. And Kassem does not have good takedown defense, but Montana De La Rosa doesn't have good takedown offense, so she might be stuck standing here. I actually think Nadia's a low-owned underdog that I will be targeting in DraftKings. But I also need to take shots on De La Rosa too because I think if she can just hit the mat one time, even if it's in that first round, then she's going to score 95 points with that takedown and the submission. So at 8,800, that could put her on the winning lineup. I'm going to have to take some shots at that just because it's a super clear path to victory. But if she can't get those takedowns, I think she's in trouble. So any win from Nadia, I think, would do it. And I'm going to be higher owned on her than I will Montana De La Rosa.
So Jimmy the Brute Cruz making his second appearance in the octagon, taking on Sam Alvey. We know the game plan to beat a guy like Sam Alvey. Do you think Jim Crute can do it without getting caught?
I don't know, man. I think they're both going to be pretty tentative. It's going to be another boring fight. That's kind of just how Sam Alvey makes all of his fights, and my rule of thumb is just to completely fade Alvey fights. So I'm probably just going to keep doing that here. Maybe with 100 lineups, they both make one or two lineups of mine, but I just see this being a close fight where it's going to go 15 minutes of all striking, and it's not going to be at a high pace. So I feel like the winner's going to score like 65 points maybe, and that's not going to cut it at their price tags. I think Crute has the higher ceiling because he will be fighting at the higher pace. I think maybe after that knockout Alvey took, maybe his chin's a little weaker now and Crute can put him out. But I also think Alvey could knock out Crute. Crute's got potential, but he's definitely not there yet. He's hittable, and Alvey can crack. So I'm a little nervous fading this fight because if one of them finishes, then I'm screwed at those price tags because it'll probably put them on the winning lineup. It's just so hard to want to target any Alvey fights, and I'm not impressed enough with Crute where I want to invest highly in him. So I say just fade this fight altogether. If you're making 150 lineups, I would probably lean Crute as the preferred play, even though I'm actually going to pick Alvey to get the split decision upset here.
So Teruto Ishihara is taking on Kyung-Ho Kang, and I know Kyle Marley has a very good record picking against Teruto Ishihara. Does that continue here?
Yeah, I think it does. I think Kang has a real easy path to victory. Just get this fight to the ground, and that'll either win him a decision if he can't lock up the submission, which I think he actually will within the 15 minutes get a submission. Teruto is pretty easy fade. Unless you do think he's going to get the knockout, that's his only shot, I think, is the knockout. So I don't want to rely on that. I think Kang's a better fighter, and I think he's going to get this fight to the ground where it should be his world. $9,400 is probably – it's tough to pay. So it's really kind of between him and Israel in a lot of lineups. I do think he has the higher ceiling because he's going to be going for the takedowns, and if he can get multiple takedowns, he can score over 100 points, whereas Israel's going to have to get an early knockout to score over 100 points. So I actually might have more Kang than Israel, but I'm probably just going to fade Teruto overall, and maybe like 35% Kang is what I'm thinking in my lineups.
So Lando Venata is taking on Anderson Silva's training partner, Marcos Mariano. And Mariano is actually a 6'2" welterweight, making the drop to lightweight. But man, he's got some massive holes in his ground game. I know for whatever reason, Lando just doesn't win fights inside the octagon. Do you think he changes that here?
Yeah, man, I just finished this fight. And this Mariano guy, man, he fucking sucks. I don't even know. I don't know how he got into the UFC. I feel like they called the wrong guy, and this dude's gonna show up and they're like, "Who the hell is this dude?" But no, I can't see him winning. I mean, he's gonna be the bigger guy, so I guess it's knockout or bust for him. But he's not gonna be striking at the higher pace. That's for sure gonna be Lando. And if this fight hits the ground, it's gonna be Lando all day. So I definitely got to favor Venata here, and he's actually one of my favorite plays on the card. After finishing film on this Mariano guy. So, yeah, I feel like it's a one and done for Mariano. It almost seems like they just had to get Lando a win somehow after his last 4 fights. They're like, let's just find anybody who can get him this win, and that's what they're doing here. Lando by a finish.
So some conviction for Lando Venata here by Kyle Marley on the Big Marley Minute on Half the Battle. Well, before I let you go, man, Jonathan Martinez and Luigi Burin's kicking off the card. Any opinion?
Well, all right. See, I think Burin's live, and it's going to be from grappling if he wins. He's the underdog. We do need underdogs. So I think Burin's an okay play. But the problem is everyone's kind of thinking that way. It's hard to pick dogs on this card. So I feel like Burin might be one of the more popular underdogs, which makes me kind of lean towards drafting Martinez. I think he's going to be real low owned. I think on the feet, I mean, it's not even going to be close. He's going to be striking at the higher output. He's the better striker overall. If he can get a finish at $8,500, I think that puts him on the $30,000 lineup. So I'm going to actually be taking more shots on Martinez than I will Buren, and I'm hoping that he can get it done by knockout. I'll draft a little bit of Buren just in case, so I'm not buried if he goes out there and gets a grappling win. But I don't see him getting like 100 points, even if he does get a grappling-based win. So I don't think he's a must, but I think he'll be a little bit too popular for my liking. Let's go. Martinez, mid to late stoppage.
And that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. Well, Kyle, it's going down this Saturday. They can follow you at Big Marley 3, and they can get your write-ups at bestfightpicks.com.
That's right, man. I'm finishing now. I should have it finished by tonight, so I'll send that your way. You can throw it up, and let's make everybody some money. Hopefully they buy it, read it, and cash from it. Good luck, everyone.
Yes, sir. We'll speak soon, Kyle.
All right, take care.
And that's why Kyle Marley is the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. Well, Shaq, now we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC 234?
My fight to watch is going to be Ricky Simón versus Rani Yahya, man. Ricky Simon's got a lot of hype right now. Rani Yahya has been proven to, be a perennial top 15 guy throughout his whole career. He's got a great UFC record. He's kind of struggled with these style matchups in the past. And, if Ricky wins this fight, man, that's a big win. He can say something that a lot of prospects can't say, that he actually beat Rani, So it's going to be a good fight, and that's my fight to watch.
Yeah, obviously Ricky versus Rani Yahya is definitely one of the fights to watch. The classic wrestler versus jiu-jitsu guy. I will be tuning in. Robert Hale, what is the fight to watch?
The fight to watch, everybody, would definitely be Devontae Kincaid Smith versus Dong Hong Kim, just because if you're ready to see probably a spectacular knockout in the very first round, that's something you're going to see. I think they're going to steal the show.
Yeah, I will 100% be tuning in to see a guy like Devontae Smith, especially after his UFC debut, and a guy in Dong Hong Kim who's already had a fight of the year contender with Polo Reyes. You have to be tuning in for that fight, no doubt about it. For me, my fight to watch is going to be Jimmy the Brute Crute versus Sam Alvey. It's not often I pick a Sam Alvey fight as the fight to watch, but based on how they match up and the fact that Jim Crute is going to come right after him, Sam Alvey is going to be looking for that counter. I don't think this is going to be the typical boring Sam Alvey fight. I think Jim Crute will make Sam Alvey exciting, and for that reason, that is my fight to watch. Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC 234?
This guy had a terrible accident where his girlfriend got killed in a motorcycle accident that he was actually driving. So, he's fighting with a heavy heart. And this guy's 18-1. He's fighting a very highly regarded prospect. And, he could be getting slept on. So, Raulian Paiva is my fighter to watch.
Damn, that happened to Raulian Paiva? I didn't know that shit.
Yeah, like recently.
Damn, that's fucking crazy, man. So, holy shit, he's fighting with a heavy heart then. Well, Rob, I gotta know, man. Who's your fighter to watch?
My fighter to watch is Anderson Silva. I'm gonna choose him because I believe everybody's really kind of slowly putting him in the back burner because they're trying not to put him in the back burner because they want to say, oh, he's a legend, he's this and that, but they want to also throw in that he's older than Israel, so he has no chance. So I'm going to go with the fighter to watch is Anderson Silva.
I won't miss an Anderson Silva fight ever. I'll just tell you that right now. So I definitely agree with that. But my fighter to watch is going to be a guy named Callan Potter. He's taking on Jalen Turner. The reason why is this is a guy that a lot of people have been saying needs to be in the UFC for a very long time. And now he's actually 34, 35 years old. He's kind of one of the older guys fighting out of Australia. But for the longest time, you heard Dan Kelly, you heard Jim Crute, they were all saying sign Callan Potter. Now he's finally in the UFC. He's taking on a kid in Jalen Turner who's 6'3", who's athletic, who's a specimen. So it's not an easy fight for your debut, but this guy, the way they regard him in Australia, like he's the captain, like he's the general, like he's the uncrowned Randy Couture. That's the way they've been acting about this guy. So for that reason, Callan Potter is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, it's going down this Saturday, UFC 234, Robert Whittaker versus Kelvin Gastelum. It's going to be a hell of a fight. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Hook up those 5-star reviews on iTunes. You can get our plays at bestfightpicks.com. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.